Close your eyes and think of a single room. Now, imagine that the door is locked from the outside. Imagine that the windows are boarded shut. There is no light. There is no sound. There is no hope. Now, imagine staying in that room for 1 day, then 1 week, then 1 year. How long would it take before you forgot the color of the sky? How long before your mind finally shattered? For Blanche Monnier, the answer was 25 years. And the most terrifying part? The people who put her there were the ones she loved the most. The year was 1876. The place was Poitiers, a city in western France known for its history, its cathedrals, and its high society. Among the elite, no name carried more weight than Monnier. They were a family of old money and deep respect. Madame Louise Monnier was a pillar of the community, a woman who had won awards for her charitable work. Her son, Marcel, was a respected lawyer. They were the perfect image of French nobility. But perfection is often a mask. Behind the heavy oak doors of the Monnier mansion, a storm was brewing. A storm centered on Louise's daughter, a young woman named Blanche. Blanche Monnier was 25 years old. She was widely considered the most beautiful girl in the city. She had long, flowing hair, deep eyes, and a spirit that was far too large for the rigid rules of her mother's world. She was a romantic. She read poetry. She dreamed of a life filled with passion, not just duty. In the drawings she left behind, she captured a world of light and laughter. She was innocent. She believed that the world was as kind as the stories in her books. And then she found it. She found the love she had been dreaming of. But in 19th century France, love was not about the heart. It was about the bank account. It was about social status. And Blanche's choice was a catastrophe. The man Blanche loved was an older lawyer. He was successful, but he was a Republican, a political stance that Louise Monnier loathed. More importantly, he was poor. He had no title. He had no land. Louise was not just a mother. She was a master of control. She spent her days managing the family's reputation like a commander managing a war. To her, Blanche was not a daughter. Blanche was an asset, and Blanche's love was a betrayal of the Monnier name. Louise demanded that Blanche end the relationship. She used every tool in her arsenal. She used guilt. She used anger. She used the family's legacy. But for the first time in her life, Blanche said no. Blanche believed that her mother would eventually understand. She believed that love would win. She did not realize that for Louise Monnier, losing control was a fate worse than death. If Blanche would not obey, she would simply have to be removed. One morning in 1876, the neighbors noticed something strange. The Monnier house was unusually quiet. The laughter that often drifted from the gardens was gone. Blanche was nowhere to be seen. When asked, Madame Monnier put on a performance that would win her the sympathy of the entire city. With tears in her eyes, she told everyone that Blanche had vanished. Perhaps she had run away with her lover. Perhaps she had fled to Paris. The police were called. They searched the streets. They questioned the lawyer. He was devastated, broken, and had no answers. He waited for her. He looked for her every single day. But Blanche Monnier had simply ceased to exist. Weeks became months. Months became years. The city moved on. The world changed. The lawyer eventually grew old and died in 1885, never knowing what happened to his lost love. But inside the Monnier house, life continued as if nothing had changed. Madame Monnier attended church. Marcel continued his legal career. They were the grieving family who had lost their beautiful girl. How could anyone have known that while they ate their dinner in the light, Blanche was only a few feet away, screaming into the wood of a boarded window? Blanche's new world was a room on the top floor of the house. It was a small attic space. Her mother had boarded the windows shut and locked the door. There were no candles, there were no lamps, there was only the absolute, crushing blackness. Imagine the smell. The room was never cleaned. Blanche was forced to live among her own waste. She slept on a mattress of straw that became a breeding ground for insects and vermin. At first, she screamed. She pounded on the walls until her knuckles bled. She begged for her mother. She begged for her brother. But they never answered. They only opened the door once a day to slide a tray of scraps inside. Hunger became her constant companion. She ate whatever was left on the tray: rotten meat, moldy bread, cold soup. Sometimes she would have to fight the rats for the food. Eventually, the screaming stopped. Silence became her only protection. Her hair grew long and matted. Her skin became pale and translucent, like a deep-sea creature that had never seen the sun. Her muscles wasted away until she could no longer stand. She sat in the dark, staring at the boards on the window, waiting for a light that would not come for 25 years. Did she hate her mother? Or by year 10, did she even remember what a mother was? Outside, the world was moving at a frantic pace. The horse and carriage were replaced by the automobile. The candle was replaced by the light bulb. Great wars were fought, empires fell. Blanche's lover died. Her father died. Her friends married, grew old, and forgot her name. Inside the attic, time did not exist. There was only the cycle of hunger and the cycle of sleep. Blanche lived in a vacuum. She was a ghost trapped in a living body. Louise Monnier continued to play the role of the saint. She was old now, frail and respected. Marcel lived in the same house, passing his sister's door every single day. He heard her whispers. He heard the rustle of the straw. He did nothing. Betrayal is a slow poison. It doesn't kill you instantly. It keeps you alive just so you can feel the pain. How many thousands of nights did Blanche spend wondering why her brother, the man she once played with in the garden, left her to rot in her own filth? A mysterious letter arrived at the office of the Attorney General in Paris. It was unsigned. It was written in a trembling hand. It said, "Monsieur Attorney General, I have the honor to inform you of an exceptionally serious occurrence. I speak of a spinster who was locked up in Madame Monnier's house, half-starved and living on a putrid litter for the past 25 years, in a word, in her own filth." The Attorney General was shocked. The Monnier family? It was impossible. They were the elite. But the detail in the letter was too specific to ignore. He sent the police to the house. They arrived at the heavy oak doors. Louise Monnier met them with her usual grace. She smiled. She invited them in. She told them they were welcome to search her home. She was so confident in her power that she believed even the law would not dare to look behind the curtain. But the police smelled it. As they reached the upper floors, a stench began to fill the hallway, a smell of decay, a smell of death. They reached the door at the end of the hall. It was locked. It was padlocked. They demanded the key. Madame Monnier's smile finally faded. When the door opened, the police were hit by a wave of air so foul that several of them had to retreat to the hallway to vomit. The room was pitch black. One officer approached the window and tore away the boards. Sunlight flooded the room for the first time in a quarter century. In the corner, on a pile of rotted straw, lay a creature. She was naked. She was skeletal. Her hair was over 4 feet long, tangled with filth. She weighed only 50 pounds. Her eyes, long unaccustomed to the light, snapped shut in pain. She was surrounded by a thick crust of waste and food scraps, shellfish shells, pieces of bread, and the remains of vermin. She did not look like a human being. She looked like an animal that had been forgotten in a cage. One officer approached her. He spoke her name. Blanche? The creature let out a high-pitched whimper. She reached out a skeletal hand, shielding her eyes from the sun. She had forgotten how to speak. She had forgotten how to be. As the police carried her out of the house, wrapped in a blanket, the neighbors gathered. They watched in horror as the beautiful Blanche Monnier was brought out into the light. She looked at the sky. She looked at the trees. She looked at the people. She was 50 years old. The girl who had entered that room was gone forever.
The news of the sequestered girl of Poitiers spread like wildfire. It was a scandal that rocked France to its core. Louise Monnier was arrested immediately, but justice is often too slow for the victims. Only 15 days after her arrest, Louise Monnier suffered a heart attack and died. She never stood trial. She never had to explain why she did it. She escaped into the silence of the grave. Marcel Monnier was put on trial. The public demanded his head. They wanted him executed. But Marcel was a lawyer. He knew the system. He argued that he had not used violence. He argued that Blanche was mentally ill and stayed in the room by choice, a claim so absurd it made the gallery hiss with rage. The court sentenced him to 15 months in prison, but on appeal he was acquitted. The law at the time did not have a statute for failure to help a person in danger. Marcel Monnier walked free. The Monnier family had stolen 25 years of a woman's life, and the only price they paid was a few weeks in a cell and a ruined reputation. Is that what we call justice?
Blanche was taken to a psychiatric hospital. She was given clean clothes. She was given fresh food. She was given a bed with white sheets. The doctors said she was surprisingly calm. She loved the feel of the breeze on her face. She would sit for hours by the window watching the birds, but she never truly returned to us. Her mind was trapped in 1876. She spent the rest of her life in the hospital, dying in 1913. We look at her photo today, the one taken shortly after her rescue, and we see the ultimate betrayal. We see what happens when obsession is allowed to masquerade as love. Blanche Monnier didn't die in that room, but she was buried there. Every time you walk past a closed door, every time you hear a faint rustle in an attic, just remember Blanche. Remember that the monsters we fear aren't hiding under our beds. Sometimes, they are the ones who tug us in at night. Would you have sent the letter? Or would you have stayed silent too?
Prince of Darkness.